Hey Nick, how's it going?
Good, Dan. How you doing?
Oh, doing all right.
Good to hear, man.
Yeah, forgot to grab my paper.
Good
Yeah, hopefully got a
afternoon,
few.
Nick. Hi, Dan.
Oh, hi
Hey,
Christina, how are
Christina.
you?
I
Hello.
feel like we spent the whole day together today.
Yes, the whole day. This is our third
Yeah.
meeting, right?
Oh yeah, it's heating up.
You two have been busy.
Mm-hmm. Talking to cities, talking to owners, talking to who else?
The
The
sponsor,
operators.
operators. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone.
That's good.
Yeah.
Getting some things rolling. You got the ball finally going.
We are inches away from a PSA, which would be absolutely amazing.
PSA being
Purchase sale agreement. So that's what comes
okay.
after an LOI. That's
Okay.
when you get the PSA, that's an actual contract for purchase.
Okay. Nice.
That is the kingpin. Usually when you get to that point, we're good. There's still the due diligence period, but
Okay.
yeah, so well, that's like kind of the back half, but typically we vetted everything out, so there's no chance of it falling through
Okay.
unless there's something undisclosed by the seller.
Gotcha.
Okay, looks like I got all these pulled up.
I will be sending you by tomorrow morning the pitch deck for 5 points. Because
Perfect.
I did the 4 pitch deck first for today. Hi, Steven.
Hey guys,
Hey Steven.
how's it going? You hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Hey Christina,
Hi, Steven.
we don't do a lot of video
Busy?
calls. Yeah, busy.
Yes.
That's why I said to Christine, I feel like we've been together all
Yeah,
day.
sure.
Yeah, lots of activity, lots of projects. Yeah, exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. I just had a call with Kyle. We're talking about the Opal in Altamont Springs, and it seems like we have, potential path forward there as far as converting that without compressing. So that's exciting.
That's really good.
Yeah, so we connected with a land use attorney, and he introduced us to his peer, who seemed to be like a savant when it came to zoning. He has his master's degree in zoning, and I guess he really gets enjoyment finding loopholes within zoning to make things happen. That's his satisfaction. So, having the conversation, we've been looking at this project in Altamont Springs, and initially it was really attractive, great area, nice asset, lots of amenity space. But then after talking to the city, their requirements were to get to like a 500 square foot minimum, with the average square footage in the entire project needs to meet about 725 square feet. And then they wanted 2 parking spaces per multifamily unit. And so and then on top of all of this, they're also wanting to see a mixed use project where a percentage of the acreage was basically towards some type of mixed use element. So coffee shop, restaurant, office space, gym, etc. So which, doesn't help when you're converting to multifamily, because you want that amenity space for your residents, not necessarily for mixed use. And then of course, you look at mixed use, do you have enough building square footage to meet the requirements without chopping into your apartments? So what was interesting that was uncovered in this call is that there's a Floridian statute that has been recently written to allow for the conversion to affordable housing and or workforce housing without having to meet those requirements as far as square footage, which is like life-changing, right? So not only are you able to get the unit count that you're looking for, which is obviously increased NOI, but you're decreasing your CapEx because you're not having to compress units You can reuse the P tax in the units, which, you know, saves on your costs, eliminates a lot of your engineering when it comes to airflow. So something really interesting that when you become an expert in this field of converting, you know, an asset, to understand what those loopholes are, because it certainly puts wheels back on a deal that we were thinking that was potentially dead. And like, what, you know, what do you need in a deal? You not only do you need an exit strategy that's going to show a value add that's going to increase the price or the value of the property to justify the investment, but you also need a seller that's willing to transact, right? So if you don't have a seller that's willing to sell, you have nothing you're working with, right? So now that we've been talking to this owner going on 2 years, we first looked at this deal last year, and we were working through a different broker, and we got stonewalled, but yet we were persistent. Now it's with a different broker. The seller has new eyes, understands that, you know, as converters, we're their best option to get close to their purchase price, because it's going to be challenging for them to attract another hotelier to come in and try to reinvent or spruce up this hotel that, you know, is getting a little long in the tooth, but, you know, still a nice asset. So super exciting about that. You know, it's another kind of, I call it a feasibility study, but something that we will probably utilize and leverage on future opportunities. So I thought there would be something valuable to share on today's call.
Steve, that's really awesome. My name's Bo. I've been looking at I normally have a conflict during this hour, but I've been watching with a lot of interest the replays. So really appreciate your and Nick's expertise. Has really been an eye opener for me. Hey, I was curious, this zoning expert, this attorney that's a zoning expert, does he work nationally, or is he focused on Florida only?
I think he's a Floridian. I think he works in specifically Florida. I think that's where he's licensed. But I think you're going to find individuals like him throughout the country. You know what I mean? It's just finding that.
He may know some. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm fine with setting up introductions and passing on contact information.
Cool. Okay,
So,
I may reach out to you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So really kind of the behind the scenes to this call as being converters is, you know, that, you know, hurdle which keeps a lot of the competition out is that zoning, is that change of use. So and I learn more every time I touch an opportunity on ways to be creative, and I think by solving those issues and, you know, kind of finding that loophole, you know, certainly will increase the property and property value by 3 to 5 fold by doing so. So anyways, I do have a few projects that we had started looking at from last week, and I don't know who's driving, Nick or Christina.
Yep. Did you want to start with Sure Stay or
Surprise me? And then any questions while Nick is pulling that up from last week? I see we got a couple of consistent faces, and I love the fact that this is recorded. So, you know, obviously this will be sent out to the group. But yeah, any questions from last week that I can answer? All right. Nick, when you get a chance, we'll pull up a couple of hotels that I looked at since our last call. So again, the first half of the hour, we're going to be looking at hospitality to multifamily conversions. The second half of the hour is going to be self-storage to, retail to mixed use, whether it's self-storage and or retail. We got some interesting developments on some opportunities that we're going to touch upon on that call. And then we're going to be adding another mix or a niche to the call. We're looking at office space to multifamily. So I think there's a substantial surplus of office space in the marketplace. And I think there's going to be a lot of similarities as far as the underwriting and the underwriting models that we've developed with the other asset classes that we currently work with. So because there's some similarities, I think it'd be prudent for us to leverage that expertise and maybe expand into other asset classes. So what we'll do in the future is break the call up into thirds. So it'll be 20 minutes for each asset class. So, which I think will cover a very wide variety of commercial real estate. And I think that'll create a lot of synergy and can open up some further discussions. So looking at the Sure Stay Plus Hotel, this is kind of in my backyard, so kind of near and dear to me. I'm in Loomis, which is a suburb just out of Sacramento. So being the fact that this is kind of in my backyard, historically, I've been looking outside of California because California, let's face it, is not very landlord friendly, right? But there is a pool of investors that just love California and want to just invest in California because of the appreciation. I think the rate of appreciation sometimes offsets the headaches that you may have with a tenant that's not helping or paying their bills. So there's kind of pluses and minuses depending on what market you look at, but California, obviously it's a big appreciation play, especially with the conversion. So something worth looking at. So let's go to the next page, next slide. So this asset is 152 keys, built in 65. Anything pre-72 will have, excuse me, pre-78 may have some lead issues and some asbestos abatement concerns. So nothing that I necessarily looked in just yet, but something just to be to take note of when looking at, when the property is built. This is an exterior corridor on 3.3 land acres. Next page. So they're asking 15 million. This kind of gives a little more property summary, address, location. Nick, do you know where this is? Does this look familiar to you?
Little bit.
Little bit, yeah, it looks familiar
Little
to me
bit.
as well. Yeah, Sacramento's not a big town, so I've been here for going on plus 20 years. So I've driven by this a few times. Anyways, don't know about the zoning. So this is something that, was brought to us. Dan on the team is kind of working this particularly. Do you have anything to add since our last conversation, Dan, when we started looking at this property? Did you talk with the city? Anyone there give you some positive feedback on converting to multifamily?
No, I have not spoken with anybody at the city yet. I reached out to Michael today. I do recall in our last conversation that he said he does believe it has been zoned multifamily.
Okay.
I did see a few of the plans and renderings, and it does, there was obviously some kind of proposal set forward where they were actually looking at judging by the plans, they were actually looking at making them 2-story apartments. So there's kind of some different uses involved with that and some different ideas for the multifamily projects.
Sure. So this is kind of needs more information. So we kind of, chalk this one up as something that we want to look a little further into. And if you go to the next page, which is the analytics.
Is this a wooden structure or is this concrete?
It looks like it's wooden. It looks like a wooden structure on a slab. It's hard to tell, but I think that could be a mix of slab and wood. I think there's probably the main floor, obviously, and the second floor is probably concrete, but something we would look into if we did a physical inspection. Right now, we just kind of doing like the back of the napkin, underwriting to see if it's something even worth looking at further. And then there's also the possibilities of converting to condos and selling them off as condos. So something we can also further investigate. But looking at the absorption, the demand, those numbers that are in parentheses, in red, that's a negative number. So that doesn't get me very excited. Although there's some conflicting information. If you look at population growth at 4.6%, there's people moving into that area. Are they buying homes? Are they not renting apartments? So we would have to look into that a little bit further and shore that up, as well as, the exit price per unit is favorable at $270 a door. Looking at the rents are not bad. Like they could be better. So there's some things that we have to do a little more homework on, and it's a potential. So next page.
Steven, can you comment? I'm sorry, I had a question about the absorption rate. Is that an aggregate across all bedroom types, all bedroom count?
It is,
rental?
and it's in this particular market or in this sub-market of North Sacramento.
Got
And
it.
that's the number of units that are leased or rented in an annual period.
Got it. All right, thank you.
So I get excited when I see an absorption rate of like 1,500. So it
Yeah,
means if
you
I
said that
were to-
last week.
Yeah, if I were to put
Mhm.
something and release an apartment complex that's been converted from a hotel and I'm releasing 100 doors, if the absorption rate is truly 1,500 in an annual period, that means I could lease my particular property up in the first 60 to 90 days. So, looking at the location, I mean, it's in a prime area. There's a lot of growth happening in Sacramento. A lot of our growth is driven by the Bay Area, which is 3x the property values by per square foot on average, depending on what you're looking at. So, and we will continue to grow, being the capital of California. So there could be a potential for an opportunity here because, we got, a seller that's looking to transact. There's a possibility for change of use. And then we got to see what types of change of uses are feasible. And then what are the requirements as far as unit size, parking requirements. So now this is kind of a stage where we start to do some more homework. And that's what Dan is currently chasing down, which is a great learning opportunity for all of us on this call. Any questions? So here's some more images of the property and facility. I think it has potential for multifamily, clearly. And obviously has the amenity space, a pool there in the center of the courtyard. And I know there's a shortage of housing in Sacramento, so I'm curious why we have a negative absorption rate for this submarket. So that's where Dan would do some more research and figure out, is that just a mistake? Are we not accounting for the 3 or 4 other markets? This could be like in a industrial zone as a hotel where it sits. I do see some residential in the background, but because it's got residential in the background, that means there's not a lot of apartments are being leased up, right? It's all primarily residential. So that could give us the indicator why we're seeing a negative on the absorption. And we could look at, say, 2 or 3 submarkets around this particular pinpoint and see like an absorption rate of like 1,300. So the likelihood of someone driving, say, a quarter of a mile for an apartment in a different market is high. We just have to figure out if that's the reason why it's low currently. And so here are the rental rates and the size of the apartments. On average, the studios are around 350 square feet, which coincides for hotel room sizes typically. And the price per square foot is positive at 350 to 370. I see one down there at 675, so I'm kind of curious what they're including in on that. But it is significantly smaller at 277 square feet, which is, the size of a hotel room. It's usually between 275 and 350, depending on the hotel and room size. And here are the returns. So based upon some back the napkin underwriting, if this were to take off, this would, potentially be an opportunity if we can get those questions answered. And this is based upon a $12 million purchase price. So they're asking 15. There's some room there. I think we can get, 2, 3, 5 million off. But, again, I think we're probably their best. And, their best potential buyer, again, a converter play would be the play, as long as we can shore up some of that information we saw earlier.
Are they selling it as a conversion? And I guess where do they get that price?
Yeah, they're probably using that based upon their underwriting, which is not something we're too overly concerned on because we're not operating this as a hotel. But that could be potentially how they came to that 15 million. That's another question we'll have with the broker. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that we can actually convert it. Otherwise, there's no reason to try to negotiate any further. But we see this, that there's some potential here.
So before you go, you would, at this point, you would call the city and see if, hypothetically, if you bought this, can you convert it, right? Instead of,
Yep.
like you said, negotiating with the broker and trying to, get them down on price when it's no sense in doing that.
Correct. And what we
Okay.
do is when we have that conversation with city planning, we try to get in bed with the staff, try to make friends with them, try to be super sweet, endearing, win some favor, and then figure out, get their support on the project. Obviously, there's a need for housing in general, and then figure out, would this be approved, what the timeline is on getting the necessary change of use permits approved, so we can understand what type of timelines we need with the seller when we write up the LOI. Any questions? Next one. Next one's interesting. And thank you, Dan. Keep us updated. You'll have an opportunity to talk on this project next week. And it's a good learning opportunity for all of us, as well as yourself. And let's see if we can put something together there and find us 10 more just like it.
Yeah, hopefully we can do that. Yeah, hopefully I have a lot more information come next week.
Yeah, sounds great. Next project that I submitted an offer on, this is a Stable Select in Gainesville, Florida. Again, this is going to be a hospitality multifamily conversion. Next slide. This was built in 74. I like this door count as far as its number of keys at 197. Interior corridor, which is great. There's some value add there for obvious reasons. Now you're not basically opening up your front door to the elements, but this would be opening up your front door to an interior corridor. So there's some value add there, and it's on a nice patch of land at just under 8 acres. Next slide. Here's the summary. Built in 74, 3 stories. We get some meeting space, about 15,000 square feet of meeting space. That would be great for self-storage and storage lockers. This, what I found out is actually zoned by right for multifamily. So we already have the zoning for the change of use, which gets me super excited. This came to me through a broker relationship and got an idea as far as the whisper price per key is a number I think we can strike at. And then moving on to the next page. Again, absorption kind of on the low side, but if you look at the population growth, we're seeing all positive numbers. So need to figure that out. We have some decent rents for studios. Exit price on the multifamily units, 145,000. So it has some potential. Put in an offer kind of a little bit above what they bought it for 2 years earlier. And we're already kind of across that hurdle as far as the zoning. So now we just got to figure out what's going on as far as the demand goes. And so that's kind of where we're at on this particular project. Offer's been submitted. And we'll see. I think this one has some potential as well. Here's the location, kind of the map of the area. What's exciting about this is it's kind of close to the University of Florida. So I think it'd do quite well. I think with that being said, we could look at various different exit plays, student housing being one of that. But yeah. This is the city of Gainesville. Here's some pictures of the asset in question. It's got lots of meeting space, lots of gallery area. And a nice pool there in the center of the courtyard. Is a 3-story interior corridor. So you can see those balconies would be a nice value add as well for potential residents. And then looking at the rents, rents are supportive of a conversion play for the studios. We're on it. What would you say the average Christina was per square foot on the studio? Do you recall? In our
Let
underwriting?
me check. Give me 1 second. The studio.
You can go to the next slide while she's pulling that up. And here are the returns based upon the offer that was made.
It's $3.32 per square feet.
Perfect. Yeah, anything north of $3 a square foot is good numbers for these particular Floridian markets. Any questions? I think we're coming up on half of the hour. This will wrap up our hospitality to multifamily. Got a couple interesting projects that we're working on, in addition to the zoning efforts that we're doing on the Opal in Altamont Springs. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on those projects. And again, if you have any projects that you'd like for us to review, go ahead and submit that to Christina. Christina will add her email address to the chat bar, and we'll turn over the call to Nick and we'll talk about some retail to self-storage.
Thanks, Stephen. So we'll be reviewing a property submitted by Siraj today, and then another one by Pat. Pat's done a great job, submitted 5 different leads. The one we reviewed last week, Pat, I'll follow up with you on. Still doing some preliminary work on it. You guys will see that the process moves slow, but it's continuous effort, or I like to say a lot of hurry up and wait. Everything's urgent, and you run to it, and then, okay, wait for the next step. But we're going to take a look here at 1155 East Oakton Street. It is a former Kmart. You'll see this is a popular one for us in the self-storage conversion play, just because of the footprint of the building. Siraj, would you like to give us some color commentary on this property, how you found it, any kind of knowledge you have of the market and the property itself?
Yeah, definitely. Hey guys. So, all right. Des Plaines it's a city that I'm familiar with because I grew up just a couple of cities over. And so I recently moved to this area, and when you guys were doing this call, I was like, well, you know what? There's actually a building right near me. So used to be a Kmart, and then I don't know if it ever turned into a Sears. I feel like I might have turned into a Sears at 1.2. I don't know. But then there's an outlaw. So there's this part, and there's 2 outlaws kind of in the front that look like they've been kind of already sold off to KFC and then Taco Bell. And then next to the Kmart, like I kind of almost looks like it's attached to it, there is like a auto shop that's still there, that's still running today. The Kmart in the last year and a half, or right after, you know, the real COVID, they turned into like a little COVID facility, like testing facility too, for a little while. The area is good because it's very highly populated. I checked some storage facilities nearby, and I did find some, I want to say like less than like a mile away, I think. It's near the airport, which I don't know if it's good or not as a landmark. I think that's, and it's surrounded by a lot of homes, a lot of single families, townhouse complexes. There's actually a brand new subdivision of townhouses that are coming up, like a block over where you're seeing that, and right next to that post office, actually right across from the street, right next to the post office, there's a new townhouse complex going up. There's about I want to say like right next to the post office. Yeah, MI Homes, Halston Market, where it says that now, MI Homes. Yeah, that's a townhouse subdivision that's going up now. So I think that's all I know about it.
Great introduction to the property. A couple good call outs there, guys. Any new development, especially of townhomes, apartments, that's going to be a great sign of future demand and growth for self-storage, right? You think about the people that need extra space to store their stuff. Maybe they're downsizing homes, or just in any apartment setting where they need to have that extra space to store different things. Being surrounded by residential property, also a great thing. It might even be a play for vehicle storage on the lot, depending on the affluency of the area and the city's taste for it. You can also see major causeway with Lee Street right here. As you pan out, you can see kind of the major freeways in the area. Getting back to those pad sites that are carved out here. You can see the KFC, McDonald's on the subject property, entryway through here. And we'll transition over to the presentation. So built in 67 on just over 9 acres of land, zone Z4. Zoning is going to be specific to each city and municipality. There'll be some common nomenclature between them. In my experience, a lot of the C4s or like the later stages of commercial zoning typically are going to lend themselves to self-storage. I've not checked on the specific property yet with the city, but it's something to definitely look into. Just a property overview, we're sitting on over 106,000 square feet here. Again, in that 9.2 acres. Let's see if there's any other relevant information on that. Reinforced concrete. It's a one-story building, so that won't really come into play too much. Here's a good view of the property. You can see it was a massive Kmart. They have the auto portion over here, gardens and shop. All great things for the self-storage. These kind of garage doors that roll up could be used for larger 10 by 20 or even larger units. For self-storage, more of like a commercial storage for small businesses, things of that nature. You can see some cracks in the pavement, nothing too serious there. Pretty standard for this area of the country in the Midwest, where we have cold winters and hot summers during the expansion of the asphalt, but relatively in good condition. Same thing with the structure itself. Face of the building all looks good. Everything's intact. That's important, guys, especially when CapEx is going to already be pretty high for the internal conversion. Any kind of exterior facade, site work that needs to be done is going to make it strain the deal a little bit more. Breakdown of the area, like we saw on Google Maps here. You can see the subject property. The fast casual dining in the area, Dunkin', McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC, also a good sign. The different auto retailers here, all good supporting businesses for a self-storage facility. Things that are going to have people driving by in high volumes is what we want to see.
Do you ever find, Nick, I was curious if you have found in any of your experience that the neighboring businesses want to use some of your storage to support their business?
Absolutely a possibility. I don't, on my side,
I just wondered if you see
rentals.
that regularly or if that's an unusual situation.
No, I think that's definitely a possibility. On like a more global scale, things that I've come across would be like, is the adjacent retailer, especially if it's a big box, going to allow the use of this? Walmart's a good example. They will buy up large plots of land, develop their Walmart on there, and then start to subdivide and parcel out the other units. In California, Walmart was all for putting self-storage next to them. There's another amazing property I found in Orlando, Florida, where they were absolutely against it. Can anyone guess the reason why maybe a big box retailer would not want self-storage adjacent?
No.
So, yeah, right. Unlike most retailers, we're not visiting the self-storage facility continuously, right? Maybe you drop in there once a month, but for most people, we're going to park it and forget it. So you'll find that some of the original owners of parcels, when they do the subdivision, will put in mutual easement agreements or other CC&Rs to prevent certain people from going in there because they want to have another retailer that's going to drive traffic towards their business.
I see. I see.
So that'd be a closer example that I've come across.
Very interesting.
Taking a look at the site plan, guys, here, just a closer view, cutting out the parking lot. Perfect rectangular building is going to make it easy to come in there, put the storage. We have some supporting parking on the side here where we can even potentially put drive-up units or vehicle storage, depending on what's permitted. Obviously, we want to keep at least 60 to maybe 75% of the parking for the business itself. And then we even have the rear access here too for some of those roll-up garage doors we saw in the other images. Taking a look at the demographics now, jumping into the rental rates. So this is where the project started to become a challenge. And until you do the back of the napkin underwriting, you're not going to really see how it flows. On a preliminary view at 136 for a climate control 10 by 10, it's going to pass the check. Sorry about that, for pushing this through the underwriting process. If we're seeing rent rates lower than 130 per 10 by 10, it's probably not going to pencil out. There's a fixed cost with cost of goods, development costs, regardless of what area of the country you're in. And because of those CapEx costs, anything below 130 is going to be really difficult unless you're getting this building for an absolute steal. Another trend to look at here, while we're averaging 136, I always like to look back at the most recent months where we can see a bit of a downtrend. It's below the average here, suggesting that there's seasonality to the usage of these self-storage facilities, or that there's just more competitive intrusion causing some of these places to get into a price war. We can see back in July, we hit the 157. On Radius, you can go back even further than these last 13 months and see, hey, is that happening every year? Indicating maybe there's some sort of seasonality where people are coming in, using a lot more than moving out. For example, being adjacent to a university or things of that nature. Any questions on those rates, guys?
Which software is this through, Nick?
This is through Radius Plus.
And you
So
just
you're
look
able-
at the 10 by 10, right?
That's going to be my standard rate to kind of gauge how the rest of them go. It's going to be the most popular unit and the highest in the mix, probably around like 33%. Followed by like a 5 by 10, 10 by 15, and 10 by 20. But that 10 by 10 rate is going to be the easiest, quickest feel of, hey, is this good or not?
So you want an average of 130 or above, or just
130.
one?
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, that's okay, dude. Yeah, just is it like I'm looking it down here as an average, or just basic every should be above 130 for 6 months or 2 years or whatever?
Just the average. So that 136 will represent all the data in this column.
Oh, yeah, I'm
130
sorry.
is like a
Duh.
threshold. 150 is where we're starting to get excited. And anything north of 150, we're getting really excited. There's places in Florida where you'll see 200 to 230 for a 10 by 10, which is absolutely amazing. Great question, Pat. Anyone else on that? Cool. You can see this is also pulled from Radius Plus here, just a breakdown of the area. You can see the existing competitors, any kind of new builds, things in planning, permitting. We have a couple on the fringe here on this 5 mile radius. These light blues are going to be in that planning permitted stage. And that's where we're going to want to do our due diligence to investigate, hey, is this something that just has permits on it? Is it under construction? What's the status of it to really factor in the demand for that area? You can also see more recent built ones, dark green here. We have the 2019 build. And then what I'll typically do is I'll click on these and they'll have an embedded hyperlink, and a lot of these facilities will have their financials listed online so you can compare tax comps. We're going to see how that plays a factor into this. So the returns I was able to pull out of this with the initial underwriting was at 15.1% with a refi capital of 13 and a 2.48 multiplier. So it did not meet our margins as far as like moving forward on this. And I'll pull up the actual underwriting to get more tactical and specific as to why. So just a breakdown of some of the KPIs, I'll summarize on one slide here, guys. We can see a 6.2 and a 5.9 on the square foot per capita for a 3 and 5 mile. The state almanac has Illinois at 4.9. So it's above the average in the state, but still below that national of 8. So this would indicate that there's some good demand there. Population size is awesome at 108 and 306,000. We want to see large, dense, populous areas because that's going to create more stability for the asset. And a strong population growth at 3% on either side. Median household income is above 60K, another great marker for it. Unfortunately, at $2.5 million offer price, we're just at that 15% IRR. To give you a breakdown as to why, we're factoring in $300,000 for the building exterior, $40 a square foot for interior units. I even plugged in uncovered vehicle parking to help bolster the deal to create additional revenue streams by adding 29,000 square feet of drive up self-storage and another 74,000 square feet of uncovered vehicle storage. Low rents and high taxes is what made this IRR not pass the 30%. The taxes in this area were over $3 a square foot. Typically, you'll find most of them anywhere between 50 cents to $1. But that extra $3 per square foot on property taxes is going to drive a huge operational cost that's going to offset the revenue streams and reduce that NOI, reducing the overall valuation of the asset.
I just want to clarify, this is 100,000 square foot building and it's $3 a square foot per year for taxes.
Correct.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah, we're, John, where we are in Illinois, Cook County, probably the biggest county that we have in Illinois in terms of population. Yeah, we have very, very high taxes. Even our residential property taxes are very high.
thank you.
Yeah, we'll see stuff like if you look at Texas, they don't have a state income tax. So how does that state make it back? Well, they have very high property taxes as well. I think the highest I've seen is out of New Jersey. They're around like $7 a square foot.
Yeah, I'm
That's
in
why
Oregon. I know
it's from
all
New
about
Jersey.
that. Yeah, that's right.
Great ads there. Other questions from the group?
So Nick, is this like a deal that you would say just scrap and just move on, or is it something that you're like, okay, well, maybe you get it for under 2.5?
If we could get it for under that, I didn't push the penciling down to $1 million. It would still be very hard to increase that IRR because it's not necessarily the cost of the asset or even the CapEx. It's how much revenue we're realizing from it that's really bolstering the value. So had the rental rates been higher above 136, we might have had a shot, or had the taxes been lower. But unfortunately, with the modest rates and high taxes, there's probably no point at which would pencil. And you can see that I even threw at it using the entire or as much of that parking lot as possible for additional storage units, which are already pushing the size at over 100,000 square feet as it is.
Yeah.
Especially in consideration to the demand, and vehicle storage. So with every possible revenue stream squeezed out of it, it was not going to be able to move forward. One thing you could do, it's going to be a little bit trickier, is build out pad sites and collect revenue from that. But typically, you want these deals to stand on their own 2 feet as a self-storage play or vehicle storage. And then that's going to be the cherry on top. That might take you from a 25% IRR up to like a 35, 40% IRR. But the more complexity you put in the deal, the harder it is to get through not only due diligence, but the closing.
Right.
So
I mean, like, obviously there's a lot of Kmart sites and stuff. Like you're saying, it's a very popular thing right now. So is it like a function of just, Googling where Kmart used to exist and seeing if any of these make sense? Is that one of the ways that you guys are kind of finding the deals?
that could be a method. I'll go on Crexy and you can actually search for specific keywords. Like I'll put in Kmart. Not every broker is going to list it as a former Kmart. I go more based on like the size of the asset, the acreage, and the location, and then I'll filter through what I find. Typically, based on the area, size, and of land and the building, those kind of buildings already populate. You're going to eliminate stuff that doesn't apply and find more of those existing assets because all those Kmarts are going to fall within those parameters. That's where they'll start populating. And it could be a former grocery store. It could be a Best Buy. It could be something, anything that went under in that area. As long as it's a big box retailer, it's going to work well. So I like to not start too narrow for my search. I like to go broader and then narrow it down.
Hey,
So
Nick,
for
question for
this
you.
here,
Oh, no, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Dan. No, you first, Dan.
Well, I was just curious, since I don't know a whole lot about these, is it a single level of storage units or are you doubling up on the levels on those?
This would be a one-story building with just one floor of self-storage. There is a possibility to do 2 floors if you were in a 24-foot ceiling. You'd have to create a mezzanine level and build out a lot more CapEx into it. So there is possibility for that. It just gets more complex as you go through it, and there's less of those opportunities on the market.
Okay. It seemed like it was a taller building, so that's why I was curious if that was accounted for at all.
Yeah, no, definitely a possibility. I'd have to go back and check the ceiling heights on it, but typically we're going to want to have 21 to 24 feet. And most retailers like this aren't building that high just for the sake of cost. But there have been units I've come across like that. Pat, you had a question as well, or a comment?
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm like, even if he got this, you said for $1 million, it wouldn't work. And I'm just thinking to myself, how is that possible? Because if I go in and put in another retail, I'm only getting maybe $6, $7 triple net. But you're
Mhm.
putting in self-storage, which gets $136 for 10 by 10. How many can I put in that store? I'm just trying to, the logic, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure.
Is it because you guys have set your ceiling price at 30% IRR and that's why it doesn't work? I mean, you know what I'm saying? You put 10 by 10 in there. How many 10 by 10s alone could you put in that square footage with aisles and stuff like that?
Yeah, I can pull up the specific underwriting and give you the exact number. But the thing to remember is that 136 is for 100 square feet. So that boils down to $1.36 per square foot of rental income.
I see
So
what
when you
you're
look at
saying.
a
Gotcha.
triple net
Okay.
at $6, yeah. That's why on last week's call, when I showed, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, the mixed use play with retail, having even $4 a square foot for additional rental really bolsters the deal.
Helps
Gives you
it.
that return.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense now. Okay. Now that I'm thinking, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Sure.
Pat hit on exactly what my question was how many can you fit in 100,000 square feet, given the mix of unit sizes that you like to have? And the corollary to that was, had you looked at converting some of this particular project to retail in order to create that same uplift calculus that you had last week?
And I have an idea because I'm going to throw this out. I have an idea. I have a friend that has a nonprofit. If you can donate this to a nonprofit and he gets the tax write-off to it, it still wouldn't be a good deal, right? Because let's say you get it free.
Mhm.
It still wouldn't work, right? Because of the numbers, because of that $1.36 to where it is, right? Is that what you're for this application?
Correct. So even
Okay.
with getting the building for free, the majority, let's see if I can pull the underwriting up here.
I didn't mean
Uh,
to take you off your track, but I'm
Oh,
trying,
no.
like, man, how do these things work?
I just saw it was a little bit higher, Nick. You had it kind of closer to the top.
Let's see. Got 5 points on there, Douglas. Here we go. Let's just pull up the underwriting so I can give you guys a live example. And I'll explain why where it fell apart. So 659 total units of that 106,000. We're looking at 99 on a 5 by 10, 218 on a 10 by 10, 204 on a 10 by 15, and 139 on a 10 by 20. You can play with the unit mixes a little bit, but the range is $1.29 to $1.56 a square foot. The smaller the unit, the more turnover. So that stabilization gets a little bit harder. So that's where that cost benefit analysis happens. Vehicle storage I plugged in here for 74,000 square feet. It would get us 258 units on this. I just do the same dollar per square foot, regardless of the size of the vehicle. There is some economy to scale with it. But for a preliminary underwrite, it's not necessary to break all that out. And the additional non-climate controlled drive up units here at 34. So
But you
you'll
have
see-
1,100 units in there, both climate controlled and non-climate controlled. Do I read that correctly? 1140.
Yes, that would be,
Wow.
we got, no, 34, sorry. That 1,100 includes the vehicle storage on the parking lot.
Oh, vehicle
So-
storage too. Okay, thanks. Got it.
Yeah, these drive up ones I just put in as a 10 by 10 as
Okay.
kind of like a placeholder, and then you can carve out the underwriting a little bit more. Where it breaks down is like I said, the taxes are increasing that operating expenses as a percent of revenue, reducing the NOI. And even if you got the building cheap, there's still a vast majority of costs associated with CapEx. So at 2.5 million, that's far less than the uncovered vehicle storage at $4 a square foot on the parking lot to build out for that. Another 300,000 for the building exterior facade. To convert the interior units to self-storage is 4 million. So we're almost double the property cost in just that CapEx for the conversion. And then building out those drive up units, another 1.4 million. So all in on hard costs are at 6.7. So, about 3.5 times what the purchase rate is. We could see what $1 million does for this project on the IRR and everything. So if we got for $1 million, we're at 24%, a 3.4 multiplier. So if we got this below $1 million, this deal could work. However, we need to get that approval from the city for the vehicle storage and those drive-up units to be on the property. There is an appetite for them to convert to self-storage. When you start talking about vehicle storage that's visible from the street, it gets a little bit more complex because they want it, when it's fully enclosed, it looks like every other retailer in that corridor. When you start parking vehicles outside, it changes the landscape of the city, and a lot of them are a little bit more hesitant. So it gets more complex from there. Had this deal penciled with just the self-storage at maybe a 20, 25% IRR, I would definitely start vetting it out harder and seeing like, okay, what else can we do? How can we pull it from here to make this more lucrative? To answer, I think it was a question out there of converting some of the space to retail. We could. It is just a single building with the one entry. So we'd have to go in there and look at the CapEx of how we subdivide it, put up the superficial walls. That's going to increase the CapEx cost. So it can, in the long run, give you more returns on it. But it's going to add, again, more complexity. The more you can make the deal straightforward, the more it's going to be attractive to investors. John, I saw your hands up still. Did you have another question?
No, sorry, I should remove my hand. Sorry about that.
Totally fine.
Appreciate it.
So that's kind of the insights there. Suraj, if you want to reach out to the city and see, hey, is there any tax abatements? Do you have any incentive programs to lower that tax rate? That could be an opportunity. Yep. Typically, the city's looking for, more jobs to be produced is a lot of feedback for those kind of incentives, which self-storage, we're going to run it lean and mean. We're not going to have a robust staff there. We could look at, again, getting the property value down. I can't remember what it was last sold for, but they would be taking an extreme haircut at 1 million. So if you found a motivated seller, you could throw out LOIs. I'm always an advocate, throw out an offer and see what sticks. Sometimes you don't even get a response if it's too low, but then you follow up with them. One of my first LOIs, I think, was on a property who came in at 1.25 million. And they're like, they didn't even bother responding. The broker that originally sold it called us like, yeah, you guys are way off. They need like 10. So let's say it did not work out. But we're still hopeful. Steve, you remember the name of it? What was it? It wasn't Tractor Supply.
Yeah, I can't recall the name of that one. But yeah, it was like 10.4, 10.5 million was their asking price.
Yeah.
So this one, I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but so we have to have the car storage outside to make it work. Let's say that we get the building donated and he gets his tax write-off. He doesn't need the money, whatever, but get the building, that's free and clear. So it still has to have that outside car storage to make the numbers work. And the city may be a little hesitant on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In my experience, I've been reached out to the city, but because if you look at it's in a more residential area with a lot of other fast casual dining retailers, they typically would put the vehicle storage in most cities as an industrial zone where this is zoned commercial. So
Gotcha.
We could broach it with the city and see. It's going to be more of an uphill battle. We're currently working on one in 5 Points Plaza in Fairborn, Ohio, to that effect. But we're talking with them about doing an enclosed vehicle storage, which is a whole other issue because then you have to have carbon monoxide monitors, a means of getting it inside the building, or can we do like a garage style where we plant the building on the parking lot? So it can be done. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So my threshold is like, okay, if it's this complex, let me find another one that's going to be an easier barrier of access. But it's something you could pursue, but I would recommend, hey, let's go scout, find 5 more buildings like this, because there's going to be one that has lower taxes, higher rental rates, where it's like, oh, this is a slam dunk, because you're going to put a lot of effort into it to get a modest return versus you find a home run deal where it's like, hey, I put in the same effort and I get 2x, 3x more. So we're coming up at the top of the hour. I did have one of the properties Pat submitted, but I'll save that for next week. I'm glad we got to kind of go in depth on this example here and see why it didn't work. Some of the considerations, one of them being taxes. That's something that's huge in self-storage, is look at the taxes, look at the comps. And that can make or break a deal. Also things like how the rental rates impact the cash flow of it. Any closing questions or comments as we wrap up today's call?
Thank you and good information.
Appreciate that.
Todd Lee, you didn't say anything today, dude. I was looking to talk to you today, man.
Hey, Todd. There he is.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm driving,
There
got
he
a lot of background music. So I'm just listening in today, but I agree. Good stuff.
Thanks for joining,
Awesome.
everyone. Any questions, concerns, comments? Thank you for joining today's conversion call, and hope you found some value out of this call. Reach out to Christina if you have any deals that you'd like us to take a peek at. And we'll see you next week, same bat channel, same bat time. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
stuff.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a great
Have a
day.
good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.